So it is 4 o'clock and we're going to call the meeting to order, and the flag salute is going to be led by Mr. Lynch. Go ahead, Tom.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of
flag
the United
of
States
the
of
United
America
States of America
and to the republic
republic
which it stands, one
one
nation,
nation,
under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
and
and justice for all.
Thank you. Pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by posting on the bulletin board in the Beach Haven Municipal Building and mailing the same to the Beach Haven Times, the Asbury Park Press, and the Press of Atlantic City. And it is Thursday, July 30th, and it is 4 o'clock. Dan, did you have a question? You have your hand up. Oh, you can't.
Thank you. That's all.
There you go. You're good. You're good. Okay. At this time, I'm going to hand over the meeting to Mr. Tom Quirk, the Executive Director of the Coastal Coalition. And I'm going to unmute you, sir. Go ahead, Tom.
All right. Thank you very much, Sherry. I'd like to say hello to everybody that's on the call, and I hope that both you and every member of your family are safe and healthy as we go through these challenging times. I'll try to speak very briefly about the check presentation. And this started a while back when Beach Haven joined the Coastal Coalition. The coalition is a 501c3 dedicated to flood resiliency. And Beach Haven joined about 18 months ago, and they've been a very valued member. So I've had several discussions with Mayor Davis and Sherry Mason. I got a wonderful opportunity to meet some very kind people. I call them the Bailey Brothers Savings and Loan. That's just an alias. Their real names are Manasquan Bank. I met those folks, and they were very kind. We made a loan application that was prepared by Melissa Moderheiden of Shore Grants, and we were fortunate enough that the Manasquan Bank Foundation accepted it and was able to fund it. And as a result, we were able to make a donation of $1,250 to Beach Haven that they're going to use, as I understand it, for a weather station. That will give residents in real time a lot of different weather observations that are specific to Beach Haven. And that'll be a big help, obviously, to the residents. And also, in addition, I'm sure it'll probably help get some community rating systems points as well. So first of all, I'd like to thank Mayor Davis and Sherry Mason for allowing us to participate with them.
I hear some major feedback.
Yeah,
There we go.
a lot of static.
That sounds better. I was hearing lots of bugs.
Okay, should I continue?
Oh, now it's clear.
Okay, should I
There we
continue?
go. Oh, that sounds much better. Go ahead.
All right. I'm sorry if I was doing anything. So at this point, I thank Mayor Davis. I thank Sherry. I thanked Melissa. But next, I would like to thank and introduce. We can't have George Bailey and Uncle Billy here, and Jimmy Stewart's not available. But we do have Jim Vaccaro from Manasquan Bank, and I'd like to introduce him, thank him. And I'm sure he'd like to say a few words.
Okay.
Do you want to unmute him?
I'm working on it.
Okay,
There's a little bit of a delay.
gotcha.
So
Go ahead,
most
Mr.
people would-
Vaccari.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity. Most people would prefer that I say I'm mute. Very nice meeting everybody. Thank you so much. I think, Tom, you're absolutely correct. George Bailey is a great analogy. So That was a 1948 Frank Capra movie. Manasquan Bank was born March 21st, 1874. Swan Village Building and Loan Association. So we have been able to provide uninterrupted service to all our communities for all that period of time, and we are privileged. So we look at anytime we enter a new market, and obviously that is very new for us. We look at it and look at our constituencies as really our stakeholders are really our depositors, our borrowers, our employees, and the community at large. And so it's extraordinarily important for us as a community banking enterprise to ensure that we have strong, enduring partnerships with those communities. And we will continue, this is hopefully the first of many, but we will continue to support in any fashion that you deem appropriate the community of Beach Haven, the borough, and efforts within the confines of that geography. So it's really very important. Again, we're an organization that prides ourselves on being a little bit different, forging enduring relationships with all of those communities that we serve. Joining me just to my left, Catherine Franzoni. Catherine's our Chief Operating Officer. And we also, Tom, I want to thank you again for the wonderful letter that you composed on behalf of your organization as it pertains to PPP. And that experience that you had is probably sort of symbolic of who we are and what we try to do.
Tom, you're talking, but you're muted. We
And
can't
I'm
hear
working on it. I'm working on it. Go ahead, Tom.
you. Still can't hear him.
Yeah, I think it's his microphone. Tom, I
Yeah.
still can't hear you. Nope. Mm-mm.
Now he's muted again.
Mm-hmm.
Jeez.
Can't hear you.
Fab Four have this type of problem.
Well, in this COVID world, we're all learning how to work on Teams or Zoom, and it's an interesting time.
So just a quick story. We haven't had an in-person board meeting since February. So last week we had a 20 by 50 foot tent put in our parking lot. So, and we actually had our first in-person board meeting in 6 months yesterday so that we could interact. It was a little bit warm out there. But it's, this is sort of try to be as creative and innovative as you can in order for us to get through this. So we very much appreciate, Tom, unfortunately we can't hear you. We appreciate the opportunity to partner with you. This is, again, our commitment to your community is not a short-term commitment, it's a long-term commitment. And we will ensure that we do whatever we need to do in order to really create an environment that is better for each and every one of your wonderful residents. And most importantly, I think on behalf of the entire Manasquan Bank community, we wish everybody good health and happiness, and hopefully at some point in time in the not too distant future, we'll get back to some degree of normalcy, however that is defined. However we need to recalibrate. But having said that, I can tell you that I've never seen so many bicycles on the road. I've never seen so many families walking hand in hand. And I've never seen so much sort of camaraderie and colleagues really associating in a different kind of fashion. And so we look at that and we say, when someone gives us a lemon, we create lemonades, and we'll continue to do so. So thank you very much for everything that you do for your community as well.
Thank you, Mr. Vaccaro. And on behalf of the borough, and the mayor and council and the emergency management office, we'd like to thank you. We'd like to thank Melissa Vonderhayden for writing this grant, and for Tom Quirk from the Coastal Coalition who put it all together. I know, Tom, you had a check for me, right? Did you have a check for me?
I did, but.
Oh, I can hear you now.
Hear you.
Is that good? Here it is. There it is, Sherry.
Gonna hand it over?
Yep, there it is. You got it.
Oh, okay. It came right through the screen.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
pretty tricky.
That's magic. So anyway, now that you can hear me, that's probably a bad thing. I'm with Jim. I told Sherry earlier, I have a face that's best used for radio.
You and I
But I just want to say something, and I don't want to take too much of your time because I realize this is a borough meeting, but I can't tell you how happy the New Jersey Coastal Coalition is to work with a fine municipality like Beach Haven and a wonderful organization with a tremendous culture like Manasquan Bank. That's what the Coastal Coalition is about. There's no egos, there's no politics. It's just a bunch of men and women that are getting together from all walks of life to help the Jersey Shore mitigate the flood damage that has gone on from time immemorial and is going to go on forever. So it's a real pleasure, both professionally and personally, to work with all you folks. Okay, now I'm done.
Thanks, Tom.
Could I
Thanks, everyone.
Could I say one thing?
ahead.
I want to thank you personally, Tom. It's been wonderful working with you. I think I've learned a lot from your organization, and thank you very much. And thank you to the Manasquan Bank for donating this money. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, I don't know if I ever went ahead and did a roll call. So Mr. Allen,
Here.
Mrs. Baumiller,
Here.
Mr. Lynch,
Here.
Mr. Maskell,
Present.
Mayor Davis.
Here.
Okay, I have resolution 144, 2020 I'm presenting to council. It's a resolution authorizing an executive session. The executive session we will go into immediately. It will center on a tax appeal litigation and an item of attorney-client privilege regarding governing body appointments. I anticipate being in the closed session about 45 minutes and no formal action will be taken. I'm going to be using the breakout room, so if you'll just be patient with me, I'm going to move you into the breakout room approximately 45 minutes before we come back to public session. Okay, hold on just one moment. While we're waiting for him to come in, do I have a motion to approve resolution 144, 2020 that was authorizing the executive session?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Chuck.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dan. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, motion carried. Okay, so we'll move into the general discussion items. The first item on the general discussion is a request from the Marlin Restaurant for some permanent outdoor seating. I'm going to hand this portion of the meeting over to Bruce Padula to start to explain where we are in the situation. And then I know we have Mike Batista on the call and Frank Little on the call if we need to. Go ahead, Bruce.
Sure. I became aware of this, I guess, earlier this week. But I want to go back to, if you recall, in March or April, we had approved the liquor license expansion, place-to-place transfer expansion application for the Marlin. And there was one section of that resolution, one paragraph that referred to putting up some partitions to cordon off an area. And there were some renderings that were attached to the application. So there was some misunderstanding, I think, between the borough and the Marlin and Mr. Batista on whether the borough was actually approving the installation of those planters. So there's two issues, the planters and the sidewalk. My understanding from talking with Mr. Little was that there's no problem with the sidewalk, that the proper approvals were obtained for that and the sidewalk is fine. So there's an issue with the planters, and to kind of cut to the chase, they've in substance really have not been considered approved by the borough, where my understanding, I don't want to put words in his mouth, that Mr. Batista thought that we had approved them. So it's coming before the council now really for discussion to see what it wants to do, if it wants to approve those. I know it's under process already of being constructed. We do have some renderings if anyone wants to see them. I know Frank's here. I see him getting ready to jump in if he wants to say anything, or if the council has any questions. That's kind of the background of it and where we are now. So the question before the council is whether you want to proceed with granting permission to continue with that project, specifically the planters, because every other part of that has already been approved.
Now, originally we were saying that this needed to go before the land use board But in talking with Mr. Batista, he's saying that he's requesting to be granted the outdoor seating under a section of the code that says that if he's not adding additional seating, but simply moving seating from the inside to the outside, that is already granted under the code. So he wouldn't be required to go before the land use board. And then, the only other thing that came up was the use of the loading area. So could we talk about that? Bruce?
Yeah, I mean, there's a loading area there, and I think Frank's a little more familiar with the specifics of it, but there was initially a curb cut for a loading area, but now it's not there in the redesign or in the reconstruction. Frank, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I know we talked about earlier, you seem more familiar with the loading area than I am.
Go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, my understanding is the loading area must have been part of the original site plan. And actually in one of the renderings that was submitted, there's a Gemini linen truck shown backing into it. My concern is that if we're closing the loading zone, the only option is to have the curb cut replaced and have the loading zone reestablished as we're finishing up the sidewalk. Otherwise, that might have to come back to land use to eliminate a loading zone, whether it's used or not. I believe it's on the original site plan.
All right, did you want to hear from Mr. Batista? Or do you want to talk amongst the council first, Bruce?
I'd like to hear from him.
All right, let me get Bruce out here and let me get Mike on. So you understand what we're saying about how the code permits it if we're not adding additional seating. So the Marlin has 120 seats. From the renderings, it looks like there's about 54 seats outside. So that would leave 66 seats inside. Mike, are you on now?
I think I am.
Okay, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, hello, everyone, and sorry for any confusion, and I hope that we can come to a resolution that everybody's happy with. The issue as I see it right now, Frank, with the loading zone, the purpose for, we haven't eliminated the loading zone. The loading zone is still there. What we did was eliminate trucks driving up onto the curb sidewalk area because we removed, Frank, the concrete, and now it's brick pavers, and we just, it's not meant to drive a truck over. Plus, we want to have seating out there, so we really don't want to have trucks backing in there. We haven't had trucks up on that sidewalk in some time. It's wasn't really ideal to have trucks backing up on there because people were using that sidewalk, and while trucks were on the sidewalk, people had to walk out onto the road and around the truck to continue walking either east or west. And so I think the way it is now, the space is still designated as a loading area. Trucks are able to back in there. I think the truck on the rendering, it's funny how that was there. I don't believe that was backed up onto the sidewalk, Frank. I haven't seen that picture in a while, but I don't think it's reasonable that the truck should be allowed to back up on there. I think that's a mistake. We have adequate loading there from the street. We have adequate loading from our loading zone on the other side off of Bay Avenue. So I think the curb cut is good like that, not having the depressed curb. But if the council wants me to replace the curb and cut that one out and put the reduced curb back in there, then I will do that.
I guess my concern was just that we don't want to eliminate a loading area there. So as long as that is not going to have cars parked in front of it, I think the loading, as you explained it, will probably work. You'll be able to back a truck there, unload it, but not have it run over the sidewalk. It is a tight area between the two buildings, so I think the main concern is not eliminating it totally and ending up with cars parking there and then trucks out in the street. So I think we could accommodate it if the council's okay with it, as long as we don't eliminate it. and
You
leave
did.
the curb full face with the idea that there's still a loading zone available for a truck to back in.
There
Up to
was
the
one
curb.
other, there was one other issue with the curb cuts that I was considering at the time that we removed that. There are a lot of bikes that were using that, Frank, just to get off the road and come up onto the sidewalk. And in talking with the chief, I guess bikes are not supposed to be on the sidewalk. So it was understood that it probably would be a better idea all the way around not to have that curb depressed. But like I said, if you want to, cut that out and put it back, I'll do that.
All right, well, I'm not as concerned with it now that we know the loading zone is not disappearing, that there's still a spot in the street to back a truck up to the curb line.
Chuck, go ahead.
Yeah, my question goes back to the beginning. Is it the planters that are the issue here?
Well, at first it was that we were expanding the restaurant's use. We're expanding the capacity of the seating, which could trigger a requirement for more parking. And then, the closure of that loading area and that kind of thing. But some things have changed, and Mr. Batista is saying that he's not expanding the seating. He's going to be just moving some of the seating from inside to outside. And then Frank has just addressed the loading area question. So at this point, it looks like he is not required to go before the land use board and is simply asking the council for permission to finish this streetscape for the outdoor dining.
Well, that was my question was, are the planters in some way violating one of our ordinances? Because it seems like a beautification project to me.
Well, I know the recommendations for outdoor dining, and from speaking with the chief of police, any permanent protections you have for diners sitting there, the better. But I know that some members of council have some other opinions, so we need to hear them.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you.
Can I just say one thing, Chuck, on that? We've tried to follow the master plan with this whole project. I contacted Frank early on to get the style of the brick for the sidewalk. And when looking at the master plan, I didn't see any specifications that were required for the planters. And so I thought originally we were going to do stucco. Then, quite frankly, I was going to follow through with that red brick that we used on the sidewalk. And Mike and Tracy chimed in and didn't like that idea. And Tracy got involved and started researching these handmade, old-looking washed brick. And that's how they got to that color and that style. And I personally think it looks good. That's how it got to where it is right now. I think we tried to follow the master plan. I think we did follow the master plan to the extent that we could.
Make just a quick comment to you, Michael. My brother John tiled his roof down in the Keys with these really fancy imported from Japan roof tiles. And once the hurricane came along, he was then forced to replace all these expensive roof tiles. So watch out what you wish for.
Well, I think we're the three little pigs, Chuck, and I think we built the little house out of stone. So I hopefully they're staying, and when the flood comes, they're not going to move.
Amy?
So Frank, did you ever see this plan after we approved the expansion? Did you see the plan? Because I personally think when I originally voted for the expansion, I was just voting for the expansion. I am not an engineer. It is not up to me to decide if a permanent planter should be put in the middle of the borough's sidewalk. And Chuck, I don't know if, have you seen it or other members of council? My main concern is that I'm not an engineer, I'm not a lawyer, and my concern is that the pavers, once everything is removed at the end of the season, are in the middle of the sidewalk. So right now, you can tell that it's a border, but in the wintertime or, you know, after Chowderfest, when everyone tends to close down, they're just going to be pavers in the middle of the sidewalk. So, well, Frank, did you see these plans? I mean, is that
No.
something that you would have approved
Well,
of?
as I mentioned previously, I only saw these more recently, and only because I guess these were submitted way back when the liquor license was expanded, and I wasn't involved in that process. So these renderings in this plan, I guess, were submitted to council, and I never received them, and I only found out about them once these things started occurring, because I told Mike he needs a sidewalk permit, which he obtained, and that was strictly for the red brick paver sidewalk. Now, let's talk about planters. The planters started out down at the school because the floodwaters and higher groundwater are a problem for these crepe myrtles or any of these other trees because they're being planted in the groundwater and they're dying. And so all of a sudden we ended up with planters down, you know, in the right of way, in the county right of way, actually, on Bay Avenue in front of the school. And then after that, Victoria Rose ended up following that same procedure and installed permanent planter boxes again out in the right of way. So we don't have that in the master plan. The master plan envisioned tree grates at grade in the brick pavers, but we're finding out because of the flooding, you know, these trees may not survive, and we're getting more and more flooding. So,
Right,
so
but we don't have,
planters aren't in the master plan, but it seems it's a trend. The main concern I have about any of this is that there's a sufficient sidewalk width, you know, for people to get by. And I believe I don't have a scaled plan, but I think there's at least 6 foot of sidewalk between these planters and like the utility pole or.
there definitely is. My only concern is that they're in the middle of the sidewalk, and they're not, every other planter box is either flush with the building or flush with the sidewalk. They're not directly in the middle.
Yeah, they're not in the middle. They're actually up on the curb line or back at the building.
Exactly. So that's my only concern is that I, as a council person, I'm not equipped to approve that. I approve the expansion, not a placement of a planter. So Bruce, what about in the off season, if someone's riding their bike there and it's in the middle of the sidewalk and they fall over on it, a child or something like that. I just didn't feel I was equipped to make a decision of a site plan. I'm not an engineer. I was approving an expansion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't recall seeing the renderings that I got that Mr. Batista's lawyer sent to me on Tuesday. I don't recall seeing them at the time we did the expansion resolution, but I do think this is where they dovetail. So I don't know if they were submitted or not, but paragraph 17 of the resolution talks about putting a partition of not less than 30 inches and not more than 42 inches. If that was interpreted to be the planters, I know that wasn't in my mind at the time, and at least for you, it wasn't. And that's the issue that we have to deal with. That's why it's back here now, because it wasn't necessarily, in the borough's point of view, approved by that expansion resolution. That's why it's coming to you now. So I hear what you're saying. I don't know if in terms of a legal issue, there's commercial, because it's a commercial premises, the liability is on the commercial owner for sidewalk liability in that situation. That's really, where my seat would come into play.
Okay.
I have a question, Mike Batista, about, are you still going to continue with the railing system that was in the drawing in between the planters to close it off? Because that might remedy Jamie's concerns that someone's not going to see it headed down a wide sidewalk and they're just going to nail it. If it's actually a contained area with that, the open railing and stuff that you had in the rendering, that might help.
It was always the intention to provide the railing, and that was the chief of police's biggest concern, that minors wouldn't walk in and out of the area and have access to the alcohol. So Yes, it was
Planned
original.
stuff in between.
Yes, the plan shows a railing between the planters, and that was and is still part of the plan. I can say that in the last 2 weeks, being out there every day and watching the people use this space, that kids that are dining with their parents kind of get up and, walk around and sit on the planters and get out of their parents' way. People get up when they're done eating and then they just walk out instead of having to channel down through an opening and so forth. But yes, to answer your question is that was the original plan, and the intent is to follow through with the railing between the planters. Jamie and I did talk the other day, and I had also suggested that when the tables come out of there, if we want to put some benches in there for the off season where people can just sit down and relax, sort of like what's out in front of the school, sort of as just maybe a sidewalk park, that I would certainly be willing to follow through and add some benches and some places for people to just sit when the tables come out, if that helps.
Mike, that's a really good idea. And I think that's a good idea. The only question I had, I went down there today, took a look at it. Jamie, I'm as concerned as you are about the walkway. It is very attractive. And I can see where you can put the tables in the inside. I just didn't know if there was enough space there for a walkway.
Yes.
And that was my only concern. I think the railings that Sherry brought up would be a very good idea, but for anybody who had a bicycle, as you say. But I just didn't know about the walkway there, whether it was sufficient or enough. It's a very hectic area in there, a lot of traffic back and forth, and I didn't know if that was an appropriate or should it be bigger. That was my only concern.
Michael, what's the width of the sidewalk that's remaining?
6 feet, which matches the sidewalk that's coming from the west, walking east. So we followed that 6-foot clear area. And when we got to the telephone pole that's in the sidewalk, we expanded it to 7 feet. So that there was a clear 6 feet from the from the telephone pole. So there's a minimum of 6 feet clear throughout the whole walking area.
Jamie, did you have any other thoughts or concerns you need to ask Mike?
No, that was just my main concern was the placements of the planners, and then I was not, I'm not a professional, so that's not something that I would have voted on. I was under the assumption that if something was built on borough property, that it had to go to that 3-person review committee, but that's just what I thought that was the procedure, and I am a procedure person, so that's what I was just kind of uncomfortable with, that it just happened.
Chuck?
Nope. I'm good.
Dan?
I had a couple questions. One, the seating that's going to go outside, you're taking it from outside, so you're not increasing your capacity. Is that just for during the pandemic, or is that going to be follow through going forward for the rest of the term of operation of the Marlin?
Dan, when we made this application back, when we started this process back in September, we had no idea we were going to all be outside. So the intent was just to take the tables from inside and move them outside, as Sherry had said earlier on, which was compliant with previous ordinances that are on the book. So the answer to your question is yes, we are going to use tables that are inside and bring them outside. And if down the road that changes with everybody's desire to have more outside tables, let's see what happens a year from now when this whole thing is over and everybody wants to keep their outside tables. At that point in time, we'd have to definitely go back to the land use board, and it would be a topic of discussion at that time. Okay. But as it stands now, the application, when I brought it to you for the expansion of the liquor license, was to just take the tables that were inside and move them out.
Okay. And then the other question is maybe Frank can answer this. How do we designate that loading zone? Do we not stripe that? Do we yellow stripe the curb?
Well, I think that's a good point. You could yellow stripe the curb, but Mike, I don't recall in the street, there's no parking space designated at that location, correct?
It's yellow striped in that location, Frank.
Okay, then worst
Yeah.
case, you'd have to make, I mean, if the road's striped, then that takes care of it.
I just know that's a very busy intersection. That's
Right.
It's delineated.
Yeah, it was just ironic that the rendering had the truck sitting in it.
That was just ironic.
I guess you got to pay attention to your renderings, huh?
But it wasn't on the curb.
Well, no, but yeah, it's hard. I mean, I can see it backed up to the curb roughly because a rendering, imposed distorts it a little bit, but it wasn't backed up between the buildings. You're right.
I have Michael, is this seating, is this going to be for the Marlin for this season, or are you keeping the Marlin closed?
No, we actually, Jamie, when we moved 3 or 4 tables out there at the beginning of the week, we actually introduced the Marlin menu out there, and we
Okay.
fired up our Marlin system. We're
Fired up
actually
the-
running the information through our Marlin terminals. But it's interesting because when we first started this concept outside, out front of Triton, people were buying food at Barry's and coming over and sitting at the tables out in front of the Triton. And then the parents would go in and get a glass of wine or a beer or something. The kids would be out there eating their hamburgers. And we questioned, is that reasonable? Well, Mike, my son, wanted to just have this thing open to everybody. And so what I'm getting at is that people who come in and eat at the Triton can take their food and go to a table that's out in front of the Marlin. And people that want to eat the Marlin menu can sit in front of the Triton if there's a table open and get items from the Marlin menu. And so this is a working process for us. But as it stands right now, yes, the Marlin is open and we are cooking out of the Marlin.
But people can still go to Barry's and pick up their,
Yes.
the kids run over to Barry's
Yes.
and get Barry's.
Every day, Nancy, and the ice cream too. And it's a pain in the neck cleaning the ice cream up off the sidewalk. But yes,
Yeah,
we're
but
happy.
Barry's, all the work they have to do.
The more the merrier. The more business, the happier everybody is. The less stress, the less rules. The more
Okay.
free that it flows, the better that it is.
Okay, just to summarize, you are not increasing the seating when you take the Marlin and the Triton together. It's exactly the same amount of seating as you're allowed to have. You haven't increased any seating.
That is correct, and I did submit to Sherry last night a detailed drawing of the seating on the inside of the Marlin, identifying every single table. Every table has a number, and you can go in there at any one time and count your tables.
But right now, we're talking, this has nothing to do with COVID. This is how it's going to be.
Correct.
Right.
Great.
I have one other question. I still am confused about, I mean, if we approve this as a council right now, you don't have to go to the land use board, right? Sherry? I'm confused still.
I mean, from the conversation that I had with Bruce earlier today and Frank, that he's not expanding the seats and he's not taking away a loading zone. He's requesting use of the outdoor dining under a different section of the code, and that would not require a land use board approval. But I just
Okay,
wanna-
that makes sense. I just have heard different, I mean, one day I've heard one thing and one day the other thing, so.
Bruce,
I
is
just-
that correct?
I think that was the confusion, whether it needed land use board approval or not.
Right.
And I didn't know the answer when I first got this week, and looking at it and speaking with Mr. Batista's attorney and speaking with Frank and looking at some case law that they cited. Yeah, it's more of a beautification project. It's not a site plan. It's not a development project. So no, it does not need land use board approval.
So how do we proceed, Bruce, if we don't have a written document in front of us right now?
I mean, it'd be, what we talked about earlier was getting a consensus of the council, and even if they want to vote now, and then we could reaffirm that vote with a formal resolution because of the, you know, I don't want to admit confusion, but for lack of a better word, confusion about this, I'd like to really document and memorialize what occurred for the record. So the council, if it wishes, could vote now, subject to adoption of a formal resolution at the next meeting.
Okay, I'll let you handle that then, Bruce.
I would draft the resolution, but yeah, if they want to vote for it now, vote to approve the continuation of the planters, construction of the planters, with all the conditions that were discussed here that will be memorialized in a future resolution. You would just need someone to make that motion now, and then we could formalize that.
I'd like to do this now.
Are you making the motion, Nancy?
I make a motion to approve, subject to the adequate sidewalk space and everything we talked about. I would like to say, go ahead and finish.
I'll second.
Are we gonna add, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Are we gonna add are we gonna add the benches in there?
Yeah,
we would have to add that into the resolution.
Yeah.
Okay, I had a second from Mr. Lynch, so I'm
All right,
gonna roll-
whoa, Jamie, how many benches do you want?
I'm not an engineer. I need.
I'll let you lay it out.
I need Frank's input on that. I can't even see in 3D.
I put in my motion that Frank and Jamie meet and decide where those benches go.
Works for me.
Okay.
Roll call. Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mrs. Baumiller,
Yes.
Mr. Lynch,
Yes.
Mr. Maskell,
Yes.
Mayor Davis.
Yes.
Thank
Okay,
you.
that's the
All
plan.
right.
Thanks, Michael.
I'm gonna put the trees in tomorrow.
All right, so we're gonna move right on to general discussion item number 2. And we're gonna need Jamie and Frank Little for this. This was a discussion about the multifamily use in the Marine Commercial District. Go ahead, Jamie.
Okay, so what I'm pulling up what I've been doing is going through section 212 of the code and looking at each of the different zones and making sure that there's no contradictions. And when Frank and I have been going through each of these zones, discussing these, and we found that in the Marine Commercial District that there's a contradiction between A and D. And D actually mentions the word multifamily, which would allow condominiums to be built in the Marine Commercial District. But in section A, it kind of negates that. So Frank, you can explain this better. So we would need to take the section D out because multifamily is not a permitted use in the Marine Commercial Zone. It's only permitted in the RC zone and the
RCPC, I think.
yeah, the RC and the RCB.
Right. So basically what I recall about this, way back when Shelter Harbor and a lot of these condominiums became an issue, the borough was concerned about density back then. And we created this other zone to cover the existing Shelter Harbor, Shelter Cove, Station Plaza density. But then we went to the Marine Commercial Zone. We completely eliminated multifamily use from the zone. We only permit single and 2 family. And then all the marina uses, restaurants, I think, taverns, nightclubs, all that's permitted. But down the list in that zone, there's an item D that just mentions multifamily, commercial, and something else requires site plan approval. Well, that word multifamily just carried over and is inconsistent with what that ordinance meant to do. So I think I talked to Bruce about it. We just need to eliminate the line D in that ordinance so there's no confusion. But the uses permitted under item A of that section clearly indicate the intent was no multifamily is permitted in the Marine Commercial Zone.
And by multifamily, what exactly does, I mean, just to clarify, does that mean condos or does it mean duplexes?
Well, duplexes are permitted.
That's what I thought.
Family
Okay.
are permitted.
That's sort of multifamily, but it.
Well, not really. I mean, it's a 2-family use. Multifamily, I think, is 3 or more.
So multifamily is condos, basically,
Well, you know.
or apartments.
I guess some are apartments, things like that, right? Once you go past 2 units, it's multifamily on one lot. So we just need to amend that.
So let me clarify another thing. I'm kind of dumb, so I need to, the Shelter Harbor,
Right.
is a separate, that's totally separate.
Right, that's in a different zone now. It's in a
Right, it's a different zone.
RCD, which is like residential, marine, commercial.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when it was a marina, when it was.
Right. Oh, yeah, yeah,
Okay, so that was done just to allow that to happen.
right. Well, no, that happened and then we
Oh,
took
it
money-
happened first.
That all happened way back. And then as things progressed, we set up zones to, I guess, say they were pre-existing. And now anything new in the marine commercial zone is not permitted.
Okay, any members of council have a question about this? Okay, then we're going to work on the ordinance. We'll draft it and we'll send it out for review. Is that good, Jamie?
Yes.
Okay, let me just ask another question. Because Janine has called me and asked this question. If she wanted to sell Morrison's to somebody that wanted to put condos in, she can't do that, correct?
Not
Unless
without-
we have a redevelopment plan.
Not without a new redevelopment agreement that would
Exactly.
permit that.
Okay.
Okay, that answers the question.
Yep.
Okay. All right, we're going to move on to item 3, which is the capital budget discussion. I did email and link to your agenda the most updated Excel spreadsheet. Are all the members of council able to see that spreadsheet in front of them?
Is
Yeah,
it, is it different than the one before, Sherry? Because
I think it's changed every day, so
oh,
either pull up it on the linked agenda or the one that I emailed out this afternoon. I just wanted to make sure that everyone had it in front of them.
is the one on the linked agenda correct? Okay,
For the governing body, yes. Yep.
okay.
So as you can see, this, our target from what Sherry Bowler has taught us over the years is that our target for the capital budget annually should be between 600 and 800,000 because our goal right now is to pay down our debt. So we want to be making more payments, doubling our payments than what we're spending each year. So as you can see from the wish list, we have quite a bit of cutting to do. Jamie's covering her mouth. Are you in shock?
Because it jumped by $1 million in like
Yes,
2 days.
it did. So we're going to go through this list. I'm going to just briefly go through the list, and then we're going to go back through and see right away where we think we can, what decisions we're going to make right away. So the first item on the list is our next DOT project, which we're appropriating $400,000 for, but we know that we are receiving a grant for $375,000. Okay. The next item is Ocean County Schedule C. That's our agreement with Ocean County for various road projects, striping projects, resurfacing, things like that. $65,000. We have $100,000 for remove and replace storm drains, various locations throughout town. We have $150,000 on for replacement of bulkheads, 12th Street, Pelham, and Coral. For DPW heavy equipment, we have $190,000 for a wheel loader. Replacement of a 2-wheel drive pickup for Public Works, $30,000. Replacement of the driveway apron in front of the firehouse, $39,000. We're looking to replace the the sirens in town to the digital sirens, $45,000. We put in there $200,000 for renovations to the old police station. The police department's asking for the upgrades to their car cameras. We're looking at $150,000 for park improvements, $50,000 for 10 streets of tide valves. We are considering appropriating additional funding for the Public Works Garage project. The Beach Patrol has asked for some equipment, $40,000. We're considering resurfacing and restriping the municipal parking lot, $100,000. We need to do some computer upgrades and computer software purchases for the borough, $30,000. And we also have to take into consideration that we've already done an ordinance appropriating $325,000 for a trolley purchase. So altogether, we're at 2.4 million. So we have to really look hard at this list and decide where we're going with things. So we'll go back up to the top. The road reconstruction project, Frank, this is the 2021 project, right?
This is actually 2020, which would be, I believe it's 8th Street and portions of Delaware Avenue.
Okay, and we are shooting for only 25,000 out of the borough's pocket.
Correct.
Okay, so I think that is one that we're gonna skip. Ocean County Schedule C, Frank, we really didn't have an identified list of various projects, but we always have things come up throughout the year that we need Schedule C for.
Right, well, that 65 grand is probably a minimal amount that we put in each year.
Mhm.
So I think we put in more in the past year, so that did get cut down probably by 30 or 40,000.
Okay,
It's whether you want to skip a year or not. We were continuing to work on Atlantic Avenue. And I think we have money appropriated previously to go from Center to Berkeley, and then we were thinking Berkeley to Dolphin at the end. So, you know, whether you want to skip a year or not, but usually we run into problems where things come up and the county's cheaper to work with than getting a contractor, and you can't do it last minute, so you have to appropriate something, whether you use it or not. You know, that'll depend on what we run into.
okay.
I don't know if that answers the question, but I you know, it'd be nice to leave it, but, or
Yeah.
you can cut it to 50 grand. You know,
No.
that's not gonna help. 15,000 is not gonna help 2 million.
So chip away. So when we talk about replacement and removal of storm drains, we have 100,000 in there. And I
Right,
have Chris Carson behind me
yeah.
chime in. What's the priority for storm drain work right now?
Well, Chris and I talked earlier, we have some outfalls that need work, and we have other storm drain inlets throughout town that periodically need to be replaced. And it's been ongoing, and we put a little bit of money in every year's budget to accommodate that. And we have some additional drains, I think, on Atlantic Avenue and that need to be done. So, you know, that's my comment on it. You know, and that's typically what we put in the ordinance each year for a continued schedule.
Okay. All right. So we have 150,000 for the bulkhead replacement, 12 Pelham and Coral.
Right.
Could that accomplish all 3 locations or no?
Yeah, based on the last bid we received, which was for about 110 feet of bulkhead, I think that came in at about 110 grand. So I think we could probably accommodate those 3 streets with that amount of money.
Mhm.
Or if you took, you know, if you went, and I think we have a little bit of money left over from last year. You know, your option is, you know, if you took something off of that, you'd only be doing 2 of those, and you'd have to decide what you're doing, you know, the following year.
Mhm.
So, I mean, there's some wiggle room in there, but
Restoration.
not much.
Did you hear Chris?
Yeah, Chris was talking about if the borough does some of the surface restoration, we could definitely make the 3 of those street ends work with that amount of money.
Okay. Okay, so we're gonna move on. The next item on the list is 190,000 for a wheel loader. And I have Chris with me, and I'm gonna have him talk about what this request is for. Another large item on the list that's pertaining to Public Works is additional funding for the Public Works garage. So Frank, we're gonna talk about that too and try to come up with a priority order here.
Right.
Chris,
So-
loader?
Well, the loaders I mean, we have to rent one every year for beach maintenance. And, like, we have to work around the tide, so we might rent one for 2 months and can only work on, you know, every other week. When we rent them, they don't have the right tires on them for going on the beach, so, you know, it makes it hard too.
How much do we spend in rentals each year?
Probably 10 to 12 grand. I mean, this year was a lot because we had 2 of them for a while and the jug pump.
So,
Okay.
I mean,
is there,
it'll probably last 25 years.
is there any other municipality on the island that has one of these, or any in Stafford or Little Egg that we could
Township
possibly?
do the City has one, but usually when you need it, they're using theirs. Has the trouble.
I mean, my only concern is that maybe we should kind of focus on getting the garage situated so we would have somewhere to house a piece of equipment that expensive.
Mm-hmm. Frank, so let's talk about the Public Works garage. How much do you really think that is required to finish the job at the scope that it is right now?
Well, I think, as I said, we're going to be actually advertising the main part of the structure within the week. And I'm just concerned about some of the bidding I've seen more recently on some of these buildings. That additional money was going to be toward the interior fit out of the building. But we'll know in a few weeks where the overall bid is just for the base building. The building now is 8,400 square feet, and it's gotten bigger since we started working on it a year or so ago. I mean, the situation with that, if you eliminated that, basically, hopefully we will have a building erected, but it won't have the interior office space built. And I think that's what we were talking about with this, if I'm not mistaken. But if the bid comes in higher, we might have to add some money just to award the base contract. But we'll know before the end of the month. So right now, if you cut that down to 250, just to think about it, we're going to know more in another 30 days as to what we're dealing with the initial portion of the building, which will allow Public Works to utilize all the garage bays and the full interior of the building. It just won't have the 2 stories of interior office, the break room, things like that. They would use what they currently have in other buildings. Could you get rid of that? Sure, and you could, or may need some of it, but.
Well, you can certainly put that in later, can't you?
You could.
Chris, what's your priority, do you think? The loader or the interior retrofit of the garage?
I mean, you could do the interior retrofit next year.
You could do that next year. And then I know Chris was talking about having some of that work done in-house, and that'll give us a chance to flush that out to find out what they can do versus what we would have to bid.
There's a possibility, you said, that we would still need to put a little bit extra in to at least get the structure up.
Right. So I think the easiest thing to do with that is wait to get the bid. And then if we need to amend the ordinance and add more money, we'll know exactly what we need to get that part done.
Frank, when are you going to bid for this?
I think I was talking to a couple of my consultants. I think I'm going to be able to advertise by the end of next week and take bids probably the first week in September, somewhere around then.
Well, we can't award it unless there's enough in the account. So what?
I
mean,
understand
we can't award it until the whole entire. I mean, we have 1.3. We have little under 1.2 million now.
Right.
So we can award it, but even if we appropriate more funds right now,
Right.
we're not going to have the funds for another 2.5 months.
What I'm suggesting is that if you take the bids in September and they come in higher than the funds we have, you would have to do a first and second reading to amend the ordinance and add additional funds. And you have up to 60 days after you receive bids to award a contract to a low bidder, or you can request an extension from that low bidder to give you additional time. Typically, when somebody gets a project like this, they're not about to bail out unless they made a mistake. So I'm comfortable that if we take the bids, there'll be sufficient time to make amendments if we need to. And if we don't, great. And then next year we can worry about the money for the fit out.
Really, if we need to amend, I wouldn't put it as a line item in the 2020 ordinance. It would be independent anyway. We would amend the original ordinance. So
I would
it's not going to tie up or.
If you don't want to spend that kind of money for the fit out and you're going to put it in next year, I would just eliminate that from this chart right now. Take that out.
All right, that's good. All right.
We can get your.
So are we going to wait to see if we need to amend the original ordinance?
We'll have to. I mean, that's what I said. I want to take the bid and then we'll see where we are. All right.
Okay, I understand.
All right.
Okay, so then going down the list, then we 30,000 on here for replacement of a 2-wheel drive pickup for Public Works. Shari, is that something you'd want to continue to have in the capital ordinance, or was that something you would want to fund out of the capital improvement fund in the working budget?
I wouldn't do a bond ordinance for that. I wouldn't include it here. I would do a separate capital ordinance like we've been doing. We have about little under 300,000 available in the capital improvement fund.
So we wouldn't have to borrow for that. That's something we could just buy on our own out of the
Would
fund.
borrow, that would be fully funded from what we have available right now.
Okay, that's great. All right, so-
Actually, yeah, strike that. We maybe have about 250. We need money in the capital improvement fund for the down payment for our bond ordinance. So depending upon how much we finalize this bond ordinance, we need money for the down payment.
Okay. Okay, so we're gonna remove that with that as our plan. The next item is the replacement of the driveway apron in front of the firehouse. Now,
That's still approved, you know, I'm sorry, but if that's still approved as a purchase, then we would move it out.
okay,
That's what.
so I think it's still a purchase that we would need to make, but just not part of this, the bond ordinance.
I mean, it's still an expense, it's still funds, so I'm just saying it's still under, I guess, discussion. If it's approved, then we pull it out and put it on a separate capital ordinance that we don't borrow the money for.
Go ahead,
That's all.
Chris.
I just want to say that this year we're replacing a 1997 pickup that was a hand-me-down from the sewer department. And then this one here will replace a 2000 pickup, which is 21 years old.
So they're getting a good useful life out of them for sure. And the two-wheel drives won't be on the beach, so they'll last longer. Okay, the driveway apron in front of the firehouse, the fire company has asked that we consider making that replacement. I guess at some point, Rich Crane had, I don't want to say promised them, but made some indication that we would be helping them pour that the replacement concrete driveway apron in front of their building. So Frank got a quote for us, and that's prevailing wage, about $39,000. And right now the fire company is getting a quote as well on their side, since they will not be required to pay prevailing wage, to see what their price would be. Shari, if this is the way, if their price is significantly lower, couldn't we just put this into their miscellaneous operating budget and have it come out of there next year?
We could. We don't have the capability to do that this year, but that would be something we could possibly fund in the budget next year.
Since they've been using that for turnout gear, so maybe next year they would be able to switch and use it for that replacement and save that prevailing wage money. Yeah.
I mean, that's the only way that's tricky is, I mean, if they're making the purchase, that's just another contribution to them, you know, from us. So, you know, that we could, but it's a payment to the fire department, reimbursing them for their expense.
Okay, we'll have to talk about that. Okay, the next item is a replacement of the fire sirens. This has been a topic of discussion for quite some time. We've decided that we would like to upgrade the 3 sirens in town to the digital sirens so that we can control them digitally and not have them going off in the middle of the night. So this was the quote to replace those sirens, $45,000. Any comments on that?
No, and the multiple meetings that we have with the fire department is that they need to be replaced. This is not just for the fact that there have been some complaints for the signal going off at night, but they are in a state of disrepair that they don't even, correct me if I'm wrong, Sherry, but at the meetings that they say that they don't even have the parts available to fix if they were to break down in the future. Like, this is the next step. Like, it's like moving on from a flip phone to an iPhone.
That's possible, yeah. And they are the boroughs to maintain, so.
And I get at least 1 or 2 emails every week with somebody complaining about this.
Okay, so I'd like to keep that. We're estimating another 200,000 to start some renovations to the old police station. We were looking at a new roof to improve the exterior and start making some improvements to the interior. If we're not going to be moving forward with the interior offices of the Public Works Garage, I don't think it's a good idea to start working on that building, but possibly just the roof and the exterior. Is this something that the council feels is priority? I know, Nancy, you've been really wanting to move this project along.
I do. I think there's a lot we could use that police station for. It. I mean, we have trouble getting special police in the summer. It'd be a place we could house them. We don't have a lifeguards barracks anymore. It's just sitting there. It's just getting worse and worse. And if we don't do something to keep it from getting even worse, it's going to cost more in the long run. I think either that or rip it down. And we did get some estimates on ripping that place down, and it was very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
I just, I think we need to really think about utilizing, we have this whole building. The township bought a motel to house their summer people in. And I'm not talking about business, people that work in private businesses. I'm talking about people that work for the borough.
Mm-hmm. Frank, if we were just going to focus on putting an A-frame roof on there and some exterior work that we could possibly do in-house, what would a budget have to look like for that?
I mean, if we put the roof on it, it's going to end up being prevailing wage. And unfortunately, I think the 200, just for what you have here, even if you're trying to do some of it yourself, you're going to need it all.
Okay.
I mean, the roofs aren't cheap. When you start putting A-frame roof up there and, shingles and everything else and go out the bid for that, you're going to be paying prevailing wage, and that's 30 to 40% over what, you could do privately.
Right.
So,
I mean, maybe there's something, maybe we can come up with an idea of how to.
Well, you need to start with the roof, because if you don't fix the roof,
Exactly.
that's the point.
Weekend, it has been.
We
Right.
need to do the roof first and get that under control and stop the building from leaking, and then talk about the exterior.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to move on to the police department. They need to upgrade their L3 cameras, 70,000 for that. And it is at this point a mandate for them. There are no more patches and fixes for these cameras. So in my opinion, this is absolutely a need.
What specifically are L3 cameras?
They are the cameras that are in the cars.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to have, that's important, they have those.
Yes. Okay, so in the park improvements line item, we have 150,000. A portion of this, Chris has requested to continue with the decorative lighting that we just installed at Veterans Park at Taylor. We were anticipating, 50,000?
Yeah.
50,000 to do the decorative lighting to finish off Taylor Avenue Park. And then we've recently met here at the borough with a possible donor. We are looking at possibly a substantial donation from a member of the public for the Veterans Park project. And there was some discussion about the borough making, a good faith appropriation for maintenance of the park, or, just our own appropriation. So I talked with Shari Bowler about it. We thought that good faith maintenance appropriation could come later on. It could come in the working budget, not necessarily in this capital, and that could come later on, right, Shari?
Right, if need be, that could be later on. We do have remaining from last year's budget where we did park improvements with including the tennis and pickleball. We do have about 60,000 left there from last year's budget.
I know, Frank, we talked about resurfacing the existing pickleball courts in the off season.
Yeah.
So
I'm
not
still
sure.
waiting for a quote on that. I know the fella at Action Sports Surfaces was supposed to get down there, but yeah, he's real busy right now. So he told me he was going to get down there and let us know what it would be.
Because it might be possible to, I don't know what the cost would be, to maybe utilize what's left in that budget for both projects, the lighting and the resurfacing.
Yeah, we'll have to see what the resurfacing is going to be, but based on more recent quotes for something similar, it was around 30 to 40 grand based on the number of pickleball courts we have down. I think, don't we have like 6, something like that? It's a pretty big area. So
Okay,
he'll get me a quote and we'll see what we end up with, but
great. I think maybe we take the park improvement budget down to 50,000 then and see where we are at the end to see if maybe the lights at Taylor is something that will stay on or not. The next item is the tide valves. Chris, did you want to talk about those? We have some in test mode right now.
Yeah, we installed some at Glendola last year, and from what I can see, they're working pretty well. They keep the water from coming up on your basic like tides.
Chris, I can't hear you. Could you talk
Yeah,
louder?
can you speak up a bit?
We installed them at Glendola last year. Yeah, they're like the backflow valves, and they seem to work pretty well.
Good.
You have 10 streets in mind?
Yeah, I mean,
Can you rattle them off?
I don't have. I mean, I didn't really. I'm just.
Okay.
Pick the streets yet now.
Yeah. Okay.
But I mean, as we do these bulk, I mean, like the bulkheads. I mean, there's 2 we did this year, and we're doing next year. That's 5.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there's 5 other ones we can do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we'll leave that for now. The Beach Patrol has requested 40,000 for equipment. They're asking for rescue boards, a gator, and a jet ski for next year's season. Any comments or concerns on that one?
Is this to replace or to just have another gator and another jet ski?
Riche.
I think their jet ski has been having a lot of problems. I think it's currently in the shop right now.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
Same with the gator.
Okay.
We could pull this off, Sherry, too, and add this if we do a capital ordinance and not borrow money for this.
Oh, great. Okay.
This has a smaller useful life, so I would pull this off.
Great.
Okay. Do that. Okay, the next item is the resurface and restriping of the municipal parking lot, 100,000. This was something that came up with the parking committee quite a bit. We did not have the money to do it right away. Frank and I have talked about this. We're not sure how much additional parking we could actually get out there. And I want it also to be known that Chris has added 15 angled parking spaces on Amber. So that's new.
And Sherry, let me just make a comment. So the other day when I was actually right next to Amber, none of those parking spots were occupied. And it was dinner time. I was riding around on my bike, actually right before I went to Nancy's house. And when I was looking at the water reservoir, and all of those parking spots were vacant. There was not one car there. So I think that maybe this could be something maybe for next year, since we're trying to cut back, but all of those parking spots were open.
I ride by there a lot, and I noticed that. And also, I was riding my bike by Fred's Diner the other day. Some of those spots I bet if you restripe those spots, you could at least get three more spots in that block in front of that building, and they're not empty. I mean, all these we've taken up a lot of parking spots with outdoor dining, and I haven't seen a lot of spots being utilized. It's really weird.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I tend to agree that that's not a priority right now. But the spaces are available. I know it's not the greatest surface out there, but
You're not going to get any more than like a half dozen spots there.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd like to eventually do it. I think it makes sense. I think we ought to think about how it could be striped. I mean, we need an actual plan. And I personally, does it really need to be repaved? Could we just restripe it? I mean, really, you don't go very fast on a parking lot. You don't need it real
It
smooth.
really does need to be repaved since Sandy, with all the water line work and all that stuff, that's pretty ripped up in there. But
All right.
I mean, we can wait, and we have other projects on our block that we foresee coming down the pike that it might behoove us to wait.
Okay.
We have been talking about, since the end of last year, a large computer upgrade purchase. Many of the PCs in the police department need to be replaced. So we have 30,000 in the budget for that. Shari, you think that's enough for what we need based on the quote we have?
I was thinking maybe we do have about 15 or 17,000 in just our IT general line item in the budget.
Mhm.
And then I was kind of thinking that maybe the rest might even just be split across individual departments in the budget. You know, if I'm going to get a computer, I charge my computer to my department, and we kind of just spread it out across.
Mhm.
You know, we could probably make it work that way.
Okay, that's great. Okay,
Need a
and then,
little extra. Maybe we throw a couple $1,000 onto the capital ordinance, but we could probably make do with what we have in just the general budget.
okay, great. Okay, so we're down to the last line item, and at this point, we are at 1.6. And then if you back out the grant, you're at 1.2. And the last item on the list is the trolley purchase, and that's 325,000. So,
Well, a couple things.
yes,
Okay, number one, I mean, a lot of that money we were going to get back. So that's not, hopefully, we wouldn't be spending that much money, but I kind of think maybe we need to re-look at this again after COVID. I mean, as I said before, there's a lot of people here, and we've taken up tons of parking spots with outdoor dining, and I still see a lot of spots empty. I don't know why, but there are lots of people in this town. The shuttle service has been stops at 9 o'clock because we have problems with kids. Maybe we need to just hold off on the trolley for another year.
Mhm.
But I mean, I don't want to. I mean, I do think it's a great idea, but I think we need to kind of look at the whole situation. Things could be changing drastically because of COVID. It might be a different place next year.
Any other comments from the council on that?
I agree with Nancy.
I agree too. What does that mean? We have to do an ordinance to amend that, or?
I mean, right now it's just sitting. I mean, I haven't borrowed the money. I'm not going to borrow the money for it. So
can we just let it
technically-
sit?
I mean,
don't want to bag
technically,
it all together.
technically it's on our books as, authorized but not issued. So it's still adding to our debt equation. But I'm not borrowing the money. So we can let it sit for a little while if we either go forward with it at a future date, or we, cancel the ordinance and put the funds back and reduce the authorized amount. But
Well, we're not spending it. We're not going to spend it. I mean, it was just a lot of work, a lot of thought. I hate to just throw it off the books at this point, but I certainly don't want to spend it for at least another. I just think we have to, let's see what next year looks like.
Mhm.
I think it's the only smart thing to do.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think it's some of those merchants that promised to give us, funds may not be around, or may not be
That's
able
my
to,
worry too, Chuck.
I mean, I don't-
be able to contribute as much. So I agree with Nance. I think we should probably postpone it. And I didn't think about this, but somebody mentioned to me that, if the trolley has curtains, then you're inside of a enclosed,
Yeah, well, I mean, we just need to know what's going to happen in a year. We don't know.
right. Okay, so even though we're not canceling it, if we just set it aside from our minds, the ordinance that's in front of us right now would still be 1.3. Back out the DOT grant that we'll be receiving, and you're at 945,000. So we're still above our target.
Sherry,
Yeah.
what line items did you move out, or what did we take off the list?
So we moved out the pickup truck.
Right.
And we moved out the driveway aprons.
Is
We
that getting
decreased
just-
some.
Is the driveway aprons getting put on hold?
I think that I'd prefer to just have it come out of the operations budget. The public works funding, additional funding moved out. The beach patrol equipment moved out. The parking lot, municipal parking lot was removed. And the computer purchase was removed. And then I also backed out the trolley amount.
What about park improvements? Didn't we?
I took that from 150 to 50.
Okay, so
So do you think that we could ask Chris if we could move the wheel loader till next year? I mean, that's 200,000. If it only costs 10 to 12,000 to rent, I mean, that's 15 years.
Who's ringing?
I don't know whose phone's
I am,
on.
I'm trying to shut it down.
Hang up on him. All right, Chris is right here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't care. I mean, it's up to you.
Would that, I mean, would that be, I mean, if it's only 10,000, not only, but if it's 10,000 and we're talking about a $200,000 piece of equipment, I mean, I'd like to see it housed first before we invest in something like that. Is that okay, Chris? I mean, this is,
I mean, we'll
do you
rent
think you
it.
could hold on for one more year?
He'll remind you of that next year.
I know he will.
All right, so if you take that out, you're at, with the grant out, 755.
Sherry, I'm still not getting the same number as you.
So let me
So
let me tell you what's in, Shari, okay? 400,000 DOT road reconstruction, 65,000 Ocean County Schedule C, 100,000 storm drain remove and replace, 150,000 replace bulkheads, 45,000 fire siren.
Took out Chris's wheel loader.
Yes.
Okay. I thought you were just discussing.
200,000 police renovations.
Took out the fire siren too?
No, I left that in. 45,000 fire siren.
the L3 cameras, that's
That's
what you,
coming, yeah, that's coming up next. So Shari, you have line 15 is 45,000 fire siren.
Right.
16 is 200,000 old police station renovations.
Did we take that whole thing out?
What?
The whole
No.
police renovation?
No, we're leaving these. These are
No,
the
that's
ones.
that's what I thought. Okay, I'm sorry.
And then
I
the
agree.
L3 cameras for 70,000, 50,000 in park improvements, 50,000 in tide valves.
Okay.
That's it.
Drop the park improvements, so, okay.
So you're at 1.1, and then with the DOT backed out is 755,000.
Sherry, how's that, Bowler?
A lot better than what it was before, sure.
I feel comfortable.
I mean, right, we're still spending, 70,000 got moved out to a capital ordinance. Some things are just going into the budget. I mean, we're still spending some of the money, which is, okay, well, but that list looks a lot better.
Okay, so let's move on to the water utility, and then, this isn't the last time we're gonna look at this. We're gonna put it together, and Shari will work with bond counsel to get it drafted, and we'll look at it again. But Frank, we talked about the water utility budget. We don't have any water mains on tap, but we're requesting to put in 25,000 for some infrared road repairs, some trench repairs around town. 25,000 to do some work on the lime feed, and 350,000 to complete the last 35 fire hydrant replacements in town. Is that right?
Yeah, Shari, the plant improvement for the lime feed, when I talked to the water department, they had only priced equipment and didn't include any bid to install it. So that really should be 50 grand.
Well, no, the equipment was only 11,000 or 13,000.
they
We've
told
already
me-
added it.
I thought they told me 18,000, but this isn't anything that they can install. This is refurbishing the lime tanks, and it's a little more involved. So it's going to involve a contractor paying prevailing wage rate. So I'm just concerned that
Oh,
25 is not going to cover it. And
620 for material.
how much?
18,620.
Right. But I don't think you can, I think the installation is going to be a lot more than that. I mean, I just don't, you know, every time we touch that water plant, as old as it is, we run into other things. And I just thought 50 would be a better number to start with. Now that's self-liquidating. Is that right, Sherry?
It is, but there are a couple older ordinances here that we could probably clean up. I have 2 of them that total about 28,000 for just water utility improvements.
So if we use that with the 25, then we should be okay, if that's what you're talking about.
There's another one for upgrades to the water plant, electric, chlorine, and lime for 14.
Yeah, well, that project
That was
was
from
last year we talked about that, and that's going out to bid in the fall.
Not done yet.
That's the lime contact chamber and some other piping changes at the plant. We have that ready to bid, but we can't really do it because we have to shut the water plant down. So we're gonna wait till November, beginning of December to do that, so we can borrow water from an adjoining town. So we gotta be careful we might need all that money for that. I don't remember how you appropriated that.
Okay.
That was in 2017. So if we're gonna still use that.
Yeah, so I just feel more comfortable. I mean, even if you laid 50 in there, if we go to bid for this equipment, it comes in less, that's fine, but.
As far as the trench repairs, also from 2017, there is utility trench road improvements for 100,000 that we haven't touched.
Oh, that's good.
Ooh.
So then,
I mean, 25,000 that we haven't touched.
how much is it?
There's 25,000 there that we haven't used.
I thought you said 100.
Well, you said
I
100.
understand.
Yes.
I heard a bigger figure too.
There is. We appropriated 100,000 in 2017 that we haven't used.
All right.
So we can do some trench repairs.
Yeah, so we don't need this new 25 grand then.
No.
And then also, as far as the fire hydrants, in 2019, the money that we're using right now with the current project with Crest, we're funding that from 2017 ordinance.
Oh, really? Okay.
In 2019, we appropriated 160,000 that we haven't touched yet.
All right, so then that line item of 350 can go to like 190 then.
Yeah, 190, 200.
That can go to 190, and instead of having 25 in infrared trench repairs, move that 25 and add it onto the 25 for the lime plant improvements. And then I think we're covered for all those.
So you only end up with 2 plant improvements, 50,000 for the lime feed, and a hydrant replacement for 190.
Yep, and we're good.
So your budget for that would be 240,000 for capital.
That's good.
Wow, it's good.
And we are going to, we're not going to borrow for that either. We can self-fund that through the capital improvement fund.
Great.
Fantastic.
Great.
That works. Great.
Council, any other comments on that capital discussion? That was great. Okay. All right, we're going to move on. Ordinance 2020-17C, an ordinance amending and supplementing Chapter 176, sidewalks, Article 2, curbs and sidewalks of the Borough of Beach Haven, County of Ocean, State of New Jersey. And this is to clarify the responsibility of maintenance of the curb and sidewalks, set some enforcement rules and regulations also. Any questions on that? That's first reading.
Is there a motion?
All motion.
Second.
Second. Oh, okay.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Baumiller?
Yes.
Mr. Lynch?
Yes.
Mr. Maskell?
Yes.
Mayor Davis?
Yes.
All matters listed under item consent agenda are considered to be routine by the municipal council and will be enacted by one motion in the form listed. Any items requiring expenditure are supported by a certification of availability of funds, and any item requiring discussion will be removed from the consent agenda and discussed separately. All consent agenda items will be reflected in full in the minutes. Resolution 143 is rescinding and replacing Resolution 140, which pertain to tax refunding redemption monies to outside lien holders. Resolution 145, authorizing the execution of the OC Cares Grant Program Agreement with Ocean County. 146, authorizing application to the Sustainable Jersey for grant opportunity. Resolution 147, urging Governor Murphy to reinstate the homestead rebate program. 148, imploring legislators to make necessary revisions to the senior tax freeze program. Resolution 149 is in support of high-speed internet availability, accessibility. 150, approving membership to the Beach Haven Volunteer Fire Company, number 1. 151, approving membership to the New Jersey State Firemen's Association. And 152 is amending professional service contract with CME as administrative agent for the Borough of Beach Haven. Any questions on the consent?
Is that 152, is that the COA council?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay.
They've been doing a lot of work with us lately. We are now looking to amend our spending plan in the courts. So they have asked for some additional funding. We do have it in the budget, so we're going to approve that additional funding.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Baumiller?
Yes.
Mr. Lynch?
Yes.
Mr. Maskell?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
At this time, I'd like to let everyone know that Councilman Allen has relinquished his seat on the Land Use Board, and we've been discussing making an appointment to fill that seat. So at this time, I'm going to present Resolution 153. It's an appointment of a Class 3 member to the Land Use Board, and we're presenting the resolution to appoint Councilwoman Jamie Baumiller to the Class 3 seat for the unexpired term expiring on December 31st, 2020. Any discussion from council before we ask for a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Chuck.
Second.
Thank you, Dan. Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mrs. Baumiller,
Yes.
Mr. Lynch,
Yes.
Mr. Maskell,
Yes.
Mayor Davis.
Yes.
Thank you. I have a bill list tonight in the amount of $750,987.17.
I've had a chance to review the bills and would like to submit a vote of yes for their approval.
Thanks, Chuck.
Second.
Thanks, Tom.
Second.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mrs. Baumiller,
Yes.
Mr. Lynch,
Yes.
Mr. Maskell,
Yes.
Mayor Davis.
Yes.
Thank you. At this time, we'll open the floor for any member of the public wishing to speak on borough business. Please raise an electronic hand and I will call on you. Go ahead, Barb Kona. State your address for the record.
Hi, Sherry. Barb Kona, 100 Northwest Avenue. I just have a question for council about the streetscape regarding the Marlin. I think it's beautiful. I love the job that Mr. Batista has done. The planners look really, really nice. I question why the street lighting isn't part of that plan. That's my first question. When the ground was totally exposed and everything was dug up, I just thought that was the direction we were moving in. You know that I've spoken about streetscape many times in the past, and I'm wondering what kind of procedure there is when someone comes to the town for approval. Why isn't there a plan that is put in place to get that business owner to comply with the vision of the streetscape?
Well, there is an ordinance that triggers that, but it's for substantial renovation or new construction. He just wanted to install the streetscape as a gift to the town, but he couldn't afford the whole thing. He's just doing what he can, but he's not required to since he's not making a substantial renovation or new construction here.
So you're saying that it has to be a major construction then before someone is required to do the plan that has been put in place for the master plan?
You remember, we did that streetscape ordinance not long ago. And that,
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and that same rule applies for signage and everything else. So it would include the streetscape, the benches, the sidewalk, and the lighting then, if it's new construction or a major project, right?
Correct.
Okay, and then the other thing that I wanted to say regarding this one topic is that I think that most people would agree that when the planters were done for the trees over at the Pocket Park, that they were probably larger than they should have been and made for a situation of a stroller going down the sidewalk, a bit awkward where people have to jockey around. So that same model was used then at Victoria Rose. And I'm just wondering why there wasn't a discussion as far as, you know, let's shorten it up a little bit. Let's pull it in so that it's not impeding on the sidewalk so much. That's it. Thanks, Sherry.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any other member of the public that would like to make a public comment? You can raise your electronic hand and we'll call on you. Right there. Where'd he go?
I just saw Michael Batista's hand up.
Yeah, I know, I can't find him. Oh, there he is. Right here. Just a moment. Go ahead, Mike.
Hi.
Mike, Batista, state your address, please.
1014 West Avenue. Is there any discussion with council on a dog park, maybe at Nelson Avenue?
There hasn't been.
There's a big space between the children's portion of the park on the west end and the pickleball court on the east side. There's that middle section there, and I'm wondering if that would be some place where council might want to consider a dog park. I know that there are some people who would contribute. I would be willing to put some money into it personally. I don't think we have to do a lot, but it's up to the council to decide. I know there are issues with dog parks. But I also know that they work in other communities as well. And there are a lot of dogs. There are a lot of people in town, but there are a lot of dogs in town too.
I would like to maybe look at a spot not near the playground. But you know, we talked about at the Pelham Avenue property at one time as well. So we'll talk about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other member of the public wishing to speak, please raise an electronic hand. You can find that under your participants tab. Yeah. Yep. No, if they raise, it'll be up. It'll pop up here. Okay, I don't see any at this time, so we'll close the floor and ask for final remarks from council. Nancy?
I think I've talked enough today. The one thing I do want to say again is to reiterate, following the COVID rules. I know there's a lot of people out there that think we should just ignore all of them. It absolutely makes no sense. I speak again as a scientist. The number of cases have risen. I sound like I have it, but I don't. But the number of cases have risen in the US. A lot of states are not going to be opening up. They're shutting down. I think the two things we have to think about is when you wear a mask, you're not doing it for you. Well, maybe you are, but you really have to, if you don't think you need to wear a mask, think about doing it for somebody else, to try to help somebody else. And the other thing is we want to protect our elderly people and we want to get our kids back in school in September. And there's a lot of states that probably aren't going to open their schools because of the situation. We can open our schools if we follow the rules. And it really isn't that difficult to do. We've had an increase in COVID cases in New Jersey, and that's pretty obvious that it's due to parties. It's due to a lot of kids getting together, having parties inside or too close together. We need to be more careful about this. I really feel that even here in Beach Haven, the people have relaxed their guard. We want to be able to keep our restaurants open, at least for outdoor dining. We want to allow people to go in our gift shops and our dress stores. We need to be vigilant. And that means to be careful when you go to a bar, that you keep your mask on until you're sitting down, that when you go up to get a drink at the bar, you put the mask on. I know there's a lot of people that they're angry about it and they don't want to do it. It's a little thing to do. I don't like putting these masks on. I hate it, but I do it because I don't want other people to get sick. And so I just reiterate that again, please follow these rules so we can open our schools in September. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Tom?
Just to piggyback on what Nancy said, I've noticed on the beaches and going to the beaches, a lot of people do not have masks. They're not carrying masks. And they're sitting, some of them not even 6 foot, as we call it. And I, kind of mention it to some people, but other people look at you like you've got problems. But I've noticed that a lot of people are coming to the beach without masks and not wearing masks at all. And I think we probably should start to think a little bit about how we enforce that a little bit better, what it is. That's all.
Thank you. Dan?
Yeah, I don't have a lot to say this time. I'd like to piggyback on what Tom and Nancy has said about the COVID situation. And, I know, a lot of the transmission has been due to the fact that it's been so hot out, people inside together and having parties and air conditioning where it just blows the air around. So we have to be careful with that. On a brighter note, trying to find one. I think this summer has been, pretty successful given this, state of the world that we live in right now. It's great to see people out enjoying the beaches. Do they need to wear masks? Yes, if they're within 6, but it's still great that there are people on them. And another added benefit I hear from our people in the real estate market is that we can expect to have a very busy September too. I know my neighbors are going to be sticking around because their children, from Florida and out of state, their schools are closed, so they can virtually learn. So they're just going to stay. So I think that could be a boon for the economy, our local businesses. They get another, our shoulder season is turning into the rest of the season. So it's could be an added silver lining to a very dark cloud in this pandemic. So.
Thank you. Jamie?
I'll be real quick because actually my niece is getting baptized in a half hour. So we just made that. But just, I'm very excited about the weather station and getting some well updated forecasts from the Troms. I'm looking forward to that. And thank you to the council for allowing me to take Dan's position in the land use board. And I will do my very best to make sure that my decisions are evidence-based. And since Chris Carson is in the background, I wanted to thank you to Public Works. I mean, just your employees are so polite and so respectful. And some of the jobs that they have done, especially the truck drivers picking up the trash and the recyclables, I mean, they're phenomenal. So just to let you know that they're doing an excellent job, and they're just delightful to be around. And that's it. So.
Why is he laughing?
I'm so happy. Barb's clapping too. Yay. That has a lot to do with a good superintendent that's running a great ship over there. So, and then Chuck, you're last.
But I wear a mask because I'm a maskal.
Gotcha.
All right, Chuck.
I'll be here till Thursday.
Eh.
I have two areas I'd like to discuss tonight. One is about our local and municipality, and I have a political congressional note that I'd like to make too. First, Janet, my girlfriend, was down last night, and at 8:30, she went to Murphy's to pick up some grapefruit or something for me, and parked over in front of municipal building. And when the light turned, she started to walk across the street and was almost run over by a big, I'm going to say it's like a F-150 Ford truck with glass pack, mufflers on it. And the guy was, and she had a green light and the guy's giving her a finger, get out of the way. Get out of it. So these, I don't know what's going on with these trucks. But, she eventually decided, well, I'm not going to go the back way. I'm just going to go down Bay Avenue. She went down Bay Avenue, turned down Taylor, and was looking for a parking spot and headed back towards the basketball courts where her car was surrounded by about 20 kids and, not paying any attention to any of the cars driving around or anything. So, these are two issues. I know we've talked about the Taylor Avenue and the kids. I didn't really realize these trucks were a problem. I hear them outside, going by, but so that's my local issues. And on the congressional level, we lost Representative John Lewis, who I'd like to recognize for his contribution to, challenging what's best for America and voting rights and peacefully fighting injustice. He's been a great leader, and that's attested to by the fact that we had 3 presidents at his burial today. And the boy from Troy, they called him. He was a pretty outstanding guy. So that's all I have for today.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to
So
adjourn.
moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, thank you. Meeting adjourned. Have a good night,
Thank you.
guys.
Bye.
Yes.